Hi, how's it going? It's Michael Redmond here. Now, you may well know me as a stand-up comedian, which I actually was for over 30 years. Or you might know me better as Father Stone from the Channel 4 sitcom Father Ted. And if that happens to be the case and you're still wondering how I am after all these years, well, I'm still fine. So, what am I doing here? Well, I've kind of retired from stand-up, but I keep coming up with, the odd idea for a joke or a comedy monologue or a comedy routine and that kind of thing because to be honest with you, I quickly realised that taking up gardening in retirement wasn't going to satisfy me enough. It wasn't going to do it for me. Jesus, gardening. And anyway, I don't have a garden, which is probably why I was often found standing in other people's gardens over the years. So what's this all about? Well, this is my comedy podcast, which I've called "What Are You Doing in My Garden?" I suppose the best way to describe it is it's a short weekly podcast in which I'll be, throwing in a joke or two or talking about a range of things from, say, drink driving in Ireland in the 1970s, my chance encounter with Joanna Lumley, pole vaulting geriatrics, and lots of other things. But no poetry. Absolutely no bloody poetry. So if you've anything to say or add to what I've been musing on the podcast, it'd be great to hear from you. Or in fact, also if you've any questions about Father Ted, I'd be happy to answer them as well. The email address for the podcast is whatdoyoudoinmygarden@gmail.com. Hi, it's Michael Redmond here again with my podcast, What Are You Doing in My Garden? Now, as you know, we started the podcast just about 10 days ago and we put out a few episodes. I've already got quite a few downloads from all over the world, places like, Britain and Ireland, obviously, America, Australia. But one thing I couldn't help noticing was that we got 5 downloads from Bulgaria. And I thought this is a bit strange. I didn't know I had a fan base in Bulgaria. It's the last place I think of. But it reminded me of something that... Because for about 20 years I compared a show at the Stand Comedy Club in Glasgow called Michael Redmond's Sunday Service. And I was the compere, so I would come on and sort of at the start and sort of chat to people and get to know them, that kind of thing. And I would always try and find out if there's anybody in from some more exotic places like Britain or Ireland or America or Australia, somewhere a bit different. And if there was somebody, like, for example, there was one woman from Venezuela once. And once the soundman heard that there was someone in from Venezuela, he would download the national anthem for that country. And we'd always play the national anthem at the end. And I would say to the person, even though they didn't know it, I would say that it's bizarre that we have someone in from Venezuela because, bizarrely, we play the Venezuelan national anthem every week. So we would do that and we'd get them up to sing their national anthem and I would just sort of muck around in the background, pretending I knew the words. But when I saw Bulgaria, it reminded me that we did have a table of Bulgarian instruments and... It was one woman I was speaking to in particular. I presume the rest of the people she was with were Bulgarians. But she did get up at the end and sang the Bulgarian national anthem, which I could say I helped her with, but I didn't really because I don't know Bulgarian, but I pretended I did, so it didn't really matter. Anyway, so that's what we used to do. So then I thought, well, maybe it's where the downloads from Bulgaria have come because, she's paying me back for my sort of favour of playing the national anthem to her while she was in Glasgow. In fact, if it was you, I can't remember your name, but if you are the Bulgarian woman and you happen to be listening, do get in touch and I'll play the national anthem for you again and we can have another chat. That'll be grand. Okay, now before I go any further, something I need to get off my chest. I was in Starbucks recently and now I know a lot of people, post things on social media about Starbucks, like when the staff get their name wrong on the coffee cup. Now, technically speaking, they didn't get my name wrong on the coffee cup. Technically speaking, they didn't, but emotionally they did because I was standing at the end of the counter with a few other people waiting for my coffee to come out, and one of the staff put the coffee at the end of the counter and said, "Coffee for Mike." And I just didn't take any notice because I've never been called Mike in my life before. I'm simply not a Mike, so I just ignored it. But then I realised nobody else was taking the coffee, and a couple of minutes went by, and she came down to the end of the counter and looked at me and said, "Coffee for Mike." So I realised the coffee was for me, and I've never been so insulted in all my life. Mike, for Christ's sake. As I say, I've never, ever, ever been called Mike in my life before. I mean, I'm not a born-again Christian or a salesman for some stationery company or other. And I can tell you one thing for sure, I've never, ever worn a polo neck jumper in my life. Mike, for Christ's sake. Mike. But names have kind of dominated my life the last week. I'll tell you why. I was... those dreams you have when you're sort of half awake, half asleep. You're kind of waking up in the morning, but you're still half asleep and you're still kind of slightly mid-dream. And in this dream, I was standing on a street corner with this person. I don't know who it was. in the dream. I mean, I presume if it was in real life, I would know the person because I haven't got a habit of standing on street corners talking to people I don't know. But I don't know who it was, and the dreams are strange. I just don't know who it was. But anyway, this other guy turned to me and looked across the street and said, "Jesus, look, there's Matt Squid." I actually woke up with the name Matt Squid in my brain, and I couldn't figure out where the name Matt Squid comes from because as far as I knew, I'd never ever met a Matt Squid. And then I thought maybe I'd heard the name, subliminally on social media or something like that, and it had stuck in my head. So the minute I got up, I Googled Matt Squid, and he doesn't exist apparently. Well, maybe he does exist, but he's not. Google is not aware of Matt Squid, but it's doing my head, and I'm determined to find out who Matt Squid is, and I will eventually, I can assure you. Anyway, now to get to the nub of the story, which, as you know, is called Me, Boaby from Still Game, and A Night in Casablanca. Now, I was doing the Edinburgh Fringe. I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, maybe even 7. It doesn't really matter. The length of time isn't really relevant to the story, so it could be 5, 6, 7, maybe even could take a chance at 8. Who knows? Anyway, I was doing the Edinburgh Festival. I was doing it in a venue called the Gilded Balloon, which is situated in the TV rooms. It used to be in the Cowgate, and it's in the TV rooms. Now it's run by, it used to be run by Karen Corn, but it's now run by her daughter Katie. But knowing Karen, she probably has some say in the matter. I can't imagine her just sitting in an armchair smoking a pipe. Sorry, Karen. Anyway, I was doing the show in the Gilded Balloon. My show was at 5:15. I think. In fact, I don't think I remember vividly it was at 5:15 in the afternoon. But there was another show in the same venue, the TV rooms. They held about, it was one building, but there was about, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 different performing spaces in the Gilded Balloon TV rooms. And there was another show on at the same time as mine called A Night in Casablanca, starring the hugely talented and wonderful person Gavin Mitchell, or AKA Boaby from Still Game. So both the shows were on at the same time, okay? His was in a different theatre space than mine, but it was in the same building. So anyway, I was doing my show this night, and it was just a normal stand-up routine. I wasn't doing any kind of a, show with a hidden meaning or hidden themes or any sort of, postmodernist crap or anything. It was just pure stand-up. I was doing my stand-up show this evening, and I was about halfway through the show, and I saw this woman in the front row kind of fidgeting about. She looked really uneasy. And I was doing material, which I always do. I don't always do it, but I do it quite regularly, about the potato famine, and later to be followed by the mange, tout, famine in Ireland. And as I was doing this routine, I could see this woman getting very uneasy. She was sort of shifting about and crossing her legs all the time. And I got uneasy, and I tell you why, because I thought she was going to walk out, because this did happen to me before. It was a few years ago. I think it was somewhere in Dublin, and I was doing the material about the potato famine and the mange, tout. And this woman, she wasn't in the front row. I think she was sort of 2 or 3 rows back, but she suddenly stood up very loudly and said, "You've absolutely no right to do material about the potato famine. That's disgraceful. My great-grandmother died in the potato famine. How dare you? Shame on you." And then she got up and started walking out. And as she was walking out, she delivered the line, "And to make matters worse, I knew your mother before she died." Now, the most annoying thing about all this was, if you ask any comedian, the only sort of, one of the biggest down things about being a comedian, there's a lot of up things as well about it, but is that if you're heckled on stage, and at the time you can't remember, or you can't think of a comeback, a good riposte, but you fucking remember one on the way home, or when you're in your bed that night. And I couldn't think of anything that night, and it was very, very, very awkward for the rest of the gig. But anyway, to go back to this night in Edinburgh, I saw this woman shifting about very uneasily. But she didn't say anything, so I just carried on for another 2 or 3 minutes. Then eventually I saw her she kind of put her hand up in a very kind of meek way, like a sort of a nervous school kid in classroom or something like that. And she just said, "Excuse me, is this Casablanca?" And the whole audience fucking cracked up, because she'd been sitting there for over half an hour trying to figure out how my stand-up routine, doing other things, and also the potato famine and the mange, tout, famine in Ireland, how that was going to merge into the story of Casablanca, starring Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman. But I mean, she was quite polite about it. I mean, she wasn't trying to disrupt the show. So I said, it's fine. You can just get up now, and you at least you'll catch the second half of the Casablanca. And I gave her directions to where she should go to see it. But it was a beautiful opportunity, because as she was walking out of the theatre, I was able to say, "Of all the theatres in all the world, you have to walk into mine. Play it again, Sam." Now, I'm sure lots of you are swooning out there listening to my Humphrey Bogart impersonation, which I thought was quite amazing. Now, I mentioned Gavin Mitchell already, Boaby from Still Game, who was had the starring role in the show Casablanca, Night in Casablanca in Edinburgh during that year, and he does a passable impersonation of Humphrey Bogart, doesn't sing from mine, which is absolutely perfect. But I've got to know Gavin over the years, and we're actually in the same. We live in Glasgow, obviously, together, and well, not obviously. Why would we obviously? But we do live in Glasgow together. It's not obvious to you, but we do happen to live in Glasgow together, and I've got to know him quite well. And we also have parts in a radio show together called Fags, Mags and Bags, written by the wonderfully dual talents of Sanjeev Kohli and Donny McCleary. It is on BBC Radio 4, and it's actually coming into its 11th series, which I think is record-breaking, so do go and have a listen to that. But Gavin is a brilliant impersonator, an extremely funny man, and he played the part of Boaby from Still Game, and which ran for about 3 or 4 series, I think, and he was in almost every episode, so he's recognised quite a lot. And I was only in one episode of Father Ted, and I do get recognised, but nothing like as much as Gavin does. I don't mean that in a jealous way. I'm quite happy with not being recognised all the time. I don't mind being recognised; it's quite pleasant. But I do get recognised sometimes as Father Stone from Father Ted, and occasionally as Michael Redmond the comedian, but that's kind of 1 out of every 4 million. Anyway, but I do remember the first time I was recognised was extremely memorable. I haven't had anything like it since. It was about 2 years after Father Ted had gone out on television, and I think my episode had been repeated a few times, so I thought maybe I will start getting recognised, but I didn't really think about it that much. Anyway, at the time I was living in London, and I was living with my girlfriend at the time in a flat above a restaurant. The reason we were doing that was that my girlfriend was manager of the restaurant, and the flat came with the job in the restaurant. Now, there was a hatch roof in the ceiling of the restaurant, which gave access to the flat we were in. It led from the restaurant into the flat. And that's the way my girlfriend used to come home at night, because it was a bit dodgy around the back, a bit dark. Anyway, she rang me one evening. I was at home minding the kids, and she said, I've forgotten my cigarettes. This, by the way, was mid-90s, when you could still smoke in restaurants and bars, and in fact anywhere probably. But she said, would you mind coming to the hatch and dropping down my cigarettes, because I forgot my cigarettes, because it was near closing time, I think. So I went and got her cigarettes and went to the hatch. But as I was doing that, she'd been distracted by a customer, so when I opened the hatch door, she wasn't there. But it makes quite, most hatch doors, it makes quite a clunky sound when you open it. But there was a table underneath the hatch, just for 2 people, a table for 2 people. So I opened the hatch with a big clunky noise, and this couple heard the hatch door opening, and they looked up, and all they could see was my sort of disembodied face looking down from the hatch into the restaurant. And I remember the guy in particular, he looked at me with this really bewildered expression on his face for it seemed like about 30 seconds, and then he just went, Jesus, it's Father Stone. Right, that's about it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed listening, and if you listen to that episode or any of the episodes, it would be really, really brilliant to hear back from me. I'll tell you why, because the podcast format is a new format for me, because I used to do stand-up, and it's a totally different thing, because in stand-up you get an immediate reaction from the audience. Not necessarily always constructive, but you do get an immediate reaction from the audience, and you know straight away where you stand. But it's different with podcasts. I mean, we've had a few positive comments, thankfully, but by and large, you don't really know how it's going until you hear back from people. So it'd be brilliant to have your feedback sort of on anything relating to the podcast, any subjects you want me to talk about, or any thought you have on what I've been talking about. That would be absolutely brilliant. So please do get in touch on our email at whatayoudoinginmygarden@gmail.com, or also on Twitter at Waydim. That's the initials for What Are You Doing in My Garden, WAYDIMG. So it'd be great to hear from you. Right, just to say that next episode, episode 5, which is called Father Stone Could Have Been Joey the Lips from The Commitments. I'll be talking about that, obviously, and also how I left Dublin in 1987, I think it was, to go to London and try my luck on the London comedy circuit, and how that in some way impacted, in fact in a large way, of how I got to audition for the part of Father Stone in the iconic Channel 4 sitcom Father Ted. Right, that's about it. Thanks for listening. Really appreciate it. And as usual, we're going to finish the episode with my weekly Cointreau cocktail recipe. Right, here we go with my Cointreau cocktail recipe of the week. As you know, or if you've listened to the other episodes, you'll know that I'm absolutely obsessed with Cointreau. I'll drink it any time of the week. If you drink it on its own, it doesn't have to be in a cocktail, but it's even nicer in a cocktail. And this week's cocktail is called the Mai Tai, which actually sort of reminds me of living in Tahiti, and sort of spending a lazy afternoon under the sun under sort of a bamboo, bamboo umbrella. They call them bamboo umbrellas, and just sipping one Mai Tai after another. Well, I say it reminds me of living in Tahiti. I'm talking about people who actually live there. I never actually have. Right, time to don your smoking jacket and your cravat, or maybe a cocktail dress if you're a woman. In fact, no, if you're a woman, just wear a smoking jacket and a cravat as well. What the hell? Doesn't really matter. So here we go with my Mai Tai recipe. Are you sitting comfortably? Here we go. 45 milliliters of white rum, 25 milliliters of lime juice, 25 milliliters also of Cointreau, 15 milliliters of almond syrup, or probably any syrup you can get, 15 milliliters of dark rum, and also 50 milliliters of pineapple juice or orange juice. Now, remember, don't put the dark rum in the shaker. Just shake everything else about, and when you've done all the shaking, pour it into a glass, and then just top it up with some dark rum. So I hope you do enjoy it. Let me know if you make one and how you got on, and also if you've tried any of the other Cointreau cocktail recipes which I've given already in the other 3 episodes. Please let us know how you got on, or even send us a photograph of your attempts on Twitter. That'd be great. So that's about it. Until next week. Speak to you then. Bye.